Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, In the Bag, camera gear for your India safari. Presented by Nat Hab Expedition Leader, Aditya Panda. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Take it away, Aditya.
Thank you, Rob, and hello, everyone. I hope you've been having a wonderful week so far. And here in India, we are looking forward to the parks reopening and to safari starting again. As a matter of fact, the parks have reopened on the 1st of October, but you see, the first month or two just after the parks reopen are not the best time to watch large animals like tigers because the vegetation is still very lush and green from the monsoon, and that is why we like to start stylishly late in the season. And I am looking forward to starting my first trip of the season in 2 months from now, that is in December, when winter will have set in beautifully and wildlife will be everywhere. So, before we get into today's webinar, I wanted to introduce myself to those of you who are watching one of my webinars for the first time and to those of you who haven't traveled with me. My name is Aditya Panda, and I have been leading Nat Hab Expeditions since 2016. I primarily lead what we call our tiger trips, which include the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, which is what we kick the season off with, which goes on from November or December, as it is this year, through April. And I also lead India Tiger Quest and the India Tiger Photo Expedition, which we run through April and all the way to June before closing the season with them. When I'm not leading Nat Hab expeditions, I work in conservation in the eastern part of India, in eastern central India, where I work in tiger and elephant landscapes. So let's get started. As I was mentioning, the monsoons have come to an end, or nearly come to an end in India, and winter will set in about a month or so, and we are enjoying what we call October heat at the moment. It's not as enjoyable as it sounds. It's humid and reminds us of summer for a couple of weeks in October before autumn begins to set in, and you see the weather begins to improve. Winter is not something that we use in a negative sense here in India. This being a tropical country, winter is actually a season we really look forward to because it's the most pleasant time of the year. And it is also a very pleasant time to kick off the safari season because all our reserves, most of them at least, are shut during the middle of the year in the rainy season, which is from July through September. And that's because, the roads might become impassable, and it's just not easy to go on game drives at that time of the year. So this time of the year is something that we really look forward to. And as I was just mentioning, I'm looking forward to kicking off the season of 2024-25 with Grand India Wildlife Adventure starting December. Now, every year before the season restarts, it's time for us expedition leaders to take stock of our gear. It could be our clothes, our jackets and things like that, but most importantly, our camera gear. This is the time of the year when we fix everything that needs to be fixed, buy new stuff that needs to be bought before the new season, and get ready and start prepping for safari. So I thought it would be a good time to help those of you who are looking forward to traveling to India this year, and to those of you who are thinking of visiting India on safari at some point of time. I thought it would be a good time to talk to you all about what to put in your camera bag, before you get on that plane to Delhi and get ready for tigers and amazing other wildlife. Because the Grand India Wildlife Adventure is the one that I'm going to start with now, and for the majority of the season, that's the trip I'm going to be leading. I might talk more in terms of that trip as far as gear is concerned, but this webinar is meant to talk to you about gear, photography gear for all India trips, including the later ones that we do in the summer, which are the India Tiger Quest and India Tiger Photo Expedition. And most of it will also be applicable to our Land of the Snow Leopard trips. And, wherever required, I will put in special mention of anything that you need to keep in mind for a snow leopard expedition. So, when you visit India on safari, wildlife is, of course, one of the top things that is there on our list when it comes to photography subjects. But wildlife is not the only thing that we photograph. We also photograph amazing landscapes. There are lots of landscapes. Even as far as wildlife is concerned, you might need a range of equipment to cover all the amazing fauna that we see, from large mammals to little birds. You need camera gear that can keep up with all of that. And as I was just mentioning, landscapes also require, more than just wide-angle lenses. We also watch and visit a lot of beautiful monuments, and you might want, if monument photography or street photography is your thing, you might want to carry gear that is suited for that. We also have chances of meeting people from various different cultures, many indigenous tribes, and a lot of regular street photography in the cities and urban areas of India as we travel through them. So if people photography is your thing, you will have plenty of opportunity for that as well. And of course, it's always nice to photograph each other, because all of us want to preserve those memories from these amazing trips. So, be it your smartphone on selfie mode, or using your phone or cameras to take pictures, the snapshots of the trip and memories of the trip. You need to take all of that into stock and carry gear accordingly. Now here is my camera bag in front of my dry cabinet, waiting to be filled up for the upcoming safari season. And I thought I might share with you what I put in my camera bag to give you some idea of what you might need on your trip. So on this season, I am hopefully going to be having a Nikon Z8 camera. I haven't bought one yet, but I intend to buy it before the season begins, because it's high time I made that transition to mirrorless. But besides that, I will have my old workhorses, the Nikon D500, which is an excellent action camera for wildlife. It's a very fast, very sturdy, very reliable workhorse to have at hand, and I've been shooting with it for the last, 5 years or so. I also have a Nikon D7200, which serves as a backup camera. It's also a really good camera. It has a very nice sensor, and it's not as fast as the D500, but I usually have it mounted with a shorter lens, which is not necessarily used for my main wildlife action photography. This year, I have switched my main workhorse telephoto lens from my earlier Nikkor 200 to 500 5.6, which again, I have been using since 2019 to a 300 2.8 VR2. It's a lens, it's a telephoto lens that I had been looking forward to for many, many years. It is an absolutely stellar piece of optics. And, that lens used to be extremely out of reach as far as price was concerned for a very, very long time. But now that the world has switched from DSLR cameras to mirrorless cameras, and the mirrorless cameras are getting lenses, a new line of lenses that are made specifically for mirrorless cameras. It is possible to get some older generation lenses that were meant for DSLR cameras for really good prices in the used market. And the stellar super telephoto lenses will always remain stellar super telephoto lenses, even on the mirrorless bodies. So they are a really good investment, and I have just made one, and I have bought the 300 millimeter 2.8 VR2 lens, which is going to do most of my long lens photography on the trips in the upcoming season onwards. Additionally, I also have another very reliable workhorse, the Nikkor 70 to 200 2.8 VR, which is a very versatile lens. It is a lens that I usually have mounted on my backup body, on my second camera body, and I use it in situations where the animals might be too close for my long telephoto lens, or in situations where I want to take pictures of landscapes and animals in landscapes especially. But also, you see, in situations where you have, like we sometimes do, a tiger walking towards us, or a tiger really close, or say something as large as an elephant or a rhino fairly close to us. In those situations, a long telephoto lens can be useless. So in situations like that, I switch to the 70 to 200. The 70 to 200 is also an excellent lens for people photography, be it you know just portraits of people that you snap along as you visit different places, or even to take pictures of each other, your co-travelers, your family, your friends, anyone. I do not have a wide angle zoom at the moment. So I rely on a 35 millimeter 1.8 prime and a 50 millimeter 1.4 prime that I use as wide angle lenses, or as very short focal length lenses, call them standard lenses. They are useful again in taking street shots or pictures of, in most situations where you would otherwise use your smartphone to get pictures. Not that I don't use my smartphone. Smartphone is also very important on trips like these. When at the end of a day's game drives in Safari, I like to download my pictures before I go to bed. So I use my MacBook Pro laptop, which I always carry with me, and I use that to transfer my images from my memory cards to my hard drives, because you need to back up your pictures every day. Those pictures are priceless. They are pictures of moments that you will never get again. So every one of them is priceless, and it is therefore very important to back them up properly and keep them safe with multiple copies. I also have a set of chargers and cables for everything, for my cameras, for my phone, my laptop, for my hard drives, and I try and carry multiple cables and chargers so that if one doesn't work for whatever reason, I always have a backup. And you see, when we are on game drive, we are in very dusty conditions usually. So I always have my camera cleaning kit with me. Not that I use it every day or every night, but I always have it with me just in case something gets really dirty, or after a few days of safari when there is a thick layer of dust on everything. Um, Most important thing in my camera bag, and as I keep saying, in anybody's camera bag, would be a very good pair of binoculars. Because unless you find it and see it, how will you photograph it? um, and more than photography, wildlife watching is one of the primary reasons why we go out there into the field looking for these beautiful animals. So that experience of watching animals and birds should be as good as it can get. So I tend to recommend everybody to buy the best pair of binoculars that their money can afford, and that is always a very worthwhile investment. Also, I carry some Nat Hab airport pouches. You will get those when you arrive here in India, and when you get your pre-trip briefing at Delhi before you go out to the national parks and tiger reserves. Your expedition leader is going to hand these out to you. These airport pouches are really, really useful, and I'll tell you why later. I always recommend carrying two camera bodies. It's up to you whether you shoot with a DSLR or whether you shoot with mirrorless cameras. But I always recommend carrying two camera bodies because uh, when you're out in the field, when you're out in dusty, bumpy conditions, it is not safe to switch lenses. Um, Not only is it unsafe to do that because of the risk of dropping things or of the risk of dust getting into your sensor, it is also something that you might not have time for, because when wild animals are out there and you're watching them, they tend to do things unpredictably and quickly. So, in the time that it takes for you to switch lenses, you might lose a fantastic photo opportunity. So it is always better to have two bodies with two different lenses mounted on them. And, I usually have my long telephoto on one and my short telephoto on one. And that way, when you are in the heat of action and things change and an animal comes closer, or while you're taking a portrait of an animal, you might suddenly want to take some pictures of it in its landscape or with its herd, then it's just easy to switch from one camera to the other. Also, I will keep repeating the importance of having a backup of everything when going out on wildlife photography expeditions. In the rare case that one of your camera bodies does not work, or you know fails for whatever reason, at least you have another camera with which you can shoot for the rest of your trip. But if you had only one camera and it conked off for whatever reason, that would be a really disappointing situation to be in. So, two camera bodies is what I recommend. Along with that, as I was mentioning, I recommend a wide angle or standard zoom lens. There are lots of lenses that cover the entire range, say from 24 millimeter to 70 millimeter, or even wider. So always useful to have a lens in that focal length for landscapes, for people, for street photography, and things like that. Trees, even. Um, you know, it's We see a lot of beautiful trees, very interesting trees on these trips. And there's nothing like a wide angle lens to take a beautiful picture of a tree with. As I was mentioning again, a short telephoto lens is a very, very useful piece of equipment on any wildlife photography expedition. It allows you to get close to large mammals or large animals. It allows you to fit in those animals when the long telephoto is too long. It allows you to get some beautiful landscape pictures. I'm surprised myself at how many landscape pictures I actually take with a telephoto lens and not with a wide angle lens, because there are lots of situations where a telephoto lens is actually far better suited for landscape photography than a wide angle lens is. So a short telephoto lens like a 70 to 200 millimeter range is perfect for those kinds of situations. Also, 70 to 200 millimeter lenses tend to be very, very sharp lenses. They're also, as I was mentioning, excellent for people photography, especially if they happen to be of a 2.8 aperture. And then, of course, uh, photographing wildlife, everyone needs uh, you know long telephoto lens as long as one can get their hands on. So any of those typical 150 to 600 millimeter lenses produced by the likes of Sigma and Tamron, or for me as a Nikon shooter, a 200 to 500 millimeter lens, or for some other brands, lenses in the 100 to 400 or 100 to 600 millimeter range is great for wildlife photography, because the majority of your wildlife photography, be it animals or especially birds, is going to be through a long telephoto lens. Of course, if you have one, you should get a long prime lens like a 500 millimeter f4 or a 600 millimeter f4 or a 400 millimeter 2.8 or a 300 millimeter 2.8. And those lenses, goes without saying, are the absolute benchmark of, of long lens wildlife photography. And I do recommend carrying a laptop with you so that you can download your pictures every night and make sure that your day's efforts are safe and downloaded and backed up. Um, and speaking of backups, um, I always recommend carrying these, and always in the plural form. Always carry more than one. Make two copies of everything, at least two copies. These are external hard drives. You get two kinds of external hard drives. There's the um old kind, which are the old hard disk drives, which actually have a disk that rotates inside. Those are cheaper, but less reliable. These on your screen are what you would call solid state drives, which do not have any moving parts on them and are almost, bomb proof. They do not fail. They are very, very resistant to nicks and drops and, being roughly handled, and very unlikely to get corrupt. So these are what everyone is using these days, and these are what are state of the art at the moment, and these are very, very reliable. Um, I personally do have the old style of hard disk drives, simply because I haven't made the investment that a solid state drive requires, and but for those of you who are thinking of buying a hard drive for your travels, a solid state drive or SSD drive is what I would strongly recommend. And of course, you can never have enough memory cards. Um, you should have at least two memory cards for each camera body, because not only are you know the principle of always having a spare, a backup, of course, does apply. But what sometimes happens is that you see so much wildlife and you get so many photo opportunities, and cameras these days, they can shoot bursts of 20, 30 frames a second. Also, a lot of people like to shoot video these days. So and the modern mirrorless cameras are really good at shooting video. And imagine shooting even several minutes of 4K video, and you are likely to fill these cards out really, really quickly. So it's always important to have a few cards as backup in your pocket, so that if your card runs out, you can quickly change it on the go. And then I also invest in spare batteries and spare chargers, because batteries also tend to run out, and it's always useful to have a fully charged spare in your pocket. But also important to have multiple chargers, so that you can put all your batteries, including the spare ones, for charge together at night, so that by the time you wake up in the morning, all of them have full power. Also, chargers can sometimes fail, so always useful to have an extra charger too. And as I was mentioning, binoculars, uh, you know, the most underestimated piece of equipment out there for any photographer. Always have a good pair of binoculars, a pair of binoculars that you can spend significant amount of time watching through, and even in low light, and a pair that will not strain your eyes. The lower quality binoculars in the long run are not very good for your eyes. Always try and get the best quality optics in your binoculars as you can, because that will determine not only how long and how well you will watch things, it will also have an impact on the health of your eyes. Cleaning kit, very important. You will be in dusty situations. I tend to use the blower on my lenses every night. I don't wipe them clean every night, because unnecessarily cleaning them also makes them prone to scratches and smudges. So I just try and keep the lens element safe from impact and touch and other ways of getting dirty by keeping a lens hood on my lens all the time. But when I come back to camp, I will remove the hood and look at the lens element closely under a lamp like this, and see if there are any smudges or pieces of dust that are stubborn and are not going with the blower. Then I will blow the lens element clean with the blower, and if and only if required, will I ever use a cleaning solution on my own breath to moisten the lens element and then clean it with a microfiber cloth. I also carry a little paint brush, the regular paint brush that people use to paint, fat one, that I use to brush dust away from my equipment. Now, those were the basics. Those are the bare minimum that everybody should carry on their safari to India, and I assume very similar situations on any safari to Africa or South America or anywhere for that matter. But then there are some optional add-ons that you might or might not want to carry. And one of them is a monopod. Now, most of our wildlife watching in India is from the back of a safari jeep. And a monopod is of little use in a jeep because there is no guarantee that the jeep will not move. because there are other people in the Jeep. So having a monopod does give you some extra stability, extra support, uh, but not all that much. These are good when we go on hikes, of which we honestly do very few. On the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, we go on a couple of hikes, uh, looking for birds and wildlife. But if you are going on the snow leopard expedition, a monopod is going to be very, very useful for you, because there you get to be outside a vehicle on the ground and shoot at things that are often very far away. But having said that, in a safari jeep, inconvenient as it might be, having a monopod can still be useful, especially if you extend it all the way down and place it on the ground while you are in the jeep and shoot from it. So in those situations, a monopod can be useful, although I would still not include that in my recommended list. Um, if you shoot a lot of video, if you are using your mirrorless camera to shoot some videos in addition to your stills, please note that I'm saying you're primarily shooting stills, but shooting a little bit of video in addition. Then you might find a monopod useful, but otherwise it is just going to be an inconvenience and a pain to go through airports with. A tripod is something that I would not recommend on most India safaris because of very similar reasons as to why I did not recommend a monopod. Because a tripod is fairly useless inside a safari vehicle. And since we do most of our wildlife watching from a vehicle and not on foot, a tripod is of very little use. Of course, if you are into specialized forms of photography such as macro or star trails or night photography that you might want to practice back at camp, then you might consider getting a tripod with you. But do note that flying through domestic airports in India with tripods and monopods and other such equipment is going to be an inconvenience. It's going to just add to the existing inconvenience of carrying a lot of gear with you through airports. But again, I will make an exception in the case of the snow leopard expedition, because if you're going on a snow leopard expedition, you are very likely using very, very long focal lengths, and you are free to be on Mother Earth on your 2 feet and not be confined to a vehicle. So on a snow leopard expedition, please do carry a tripod and take full advantage of it, because you'll get every opportunity to do so. Now, again, coming back to people who like to shoot video or using their mirrorless cameras, this piece of equipment can be very useful. You get these handheld camera gimbals that can take a fair amount of weight. There are, in fact, gimbals where you can even have a 70 to 200 millimeter lens or a 300 millimeter lens mounted on your mirrorless camera, and you can just hold it like that. And as your vehicle is moving, you can record video through it, and it keeps it absolutely steady and still. So if you want to shoot video, this is something you might want to get with you, because makes it very easy to shoot from a moving jeep in it. Now, this is something that a lot of you might want to, especially the more creative ones, might want to carry with you. A little action camera that can be mounted anywhere. So you might want to mount it over your hat on your own head to give a perspective of everything you're looking at, or you can just mount it in front of the Jeep. And it will record either a video or a time lapse as you choose of everything that's happening on your game drive. And these cameras can get some really, really good videos when you have an animal walking towards you and you are backing up. So, especially in situations where you have a big cat walking on the road towards you and your Jeep is backing up, you can get some pretty phenomenal stuff out of a little action camera like a GoPro or something. Um, it's also a great way to sort of vlog your trip because you can fix these in the cars that we use on our overland journeys, from going from national park to national park or from airport to national park, or you can fix them in the safari jeeps, as I said, and it's a great way to document your journey. And of course, you can also mount these on a little handheld monopod that you can use to create a record of your trip as a vlogging camera, of people and other things. Um, a good, affordable alternative to the um, gimbal for a DSLR or mirrorless camera, or using an action camera as a vlogging camera, is to use your existing smartphone as one. And you get these smartphone gimbals these days. You can just, buy those online. There are lots of options for every budget. You can just use a smartphone gimbal, and it makes it much easier to take videos of your trip, especially when you are moving in a vehicle. Because if you just use your hands to hold your phone like that, there's going to be lots of bumps and shakes that are going to ruin your video. So you might want to use a smartphone gimbal to get those absolutely buttery smooth video perspectives, um, using your smartphone as a video camera. Macro lens is something that I would say is an optional add-on because, um, you see, we, as I was mentioning, are usually confined to a vehicle, and that does not give us very many opportunities for macro photography. To really do macro photography seriously, you need to be on the ground, taking pictures of flowers and insects and fungi and other things like that. You don't get very many chances of doing that on our India safari trips, especially the tiger trips, because the only time you might really get to use these lenses would probably be in the middle of the day when you're at camp, middle of the day between the drives, and again at night after dinner, maybe when should you have the urge to roam around, wander around the properties we stay at, and try your hand at macro with frogs and insects and things like that. But it is an option, and if macro photography is something that is of interest to you, then do carry a macro lens with you. Now, I do use one of these. I was mentioning earlier how I have switched from a 200 to 500 millimeter lens to 300 2.8 300 millimeter 2.8 aperture lens as my primary telephoto lens. Now, when I switched from the 200 to 500 down to the 300 millimeter lens, that obviously came with some loss of focal length. So I bought myself a 1.7 times teleconverter to convert my 300 millimeter 2.8 lens to a 510 millimeter f4.5 lens. So a teleconverter is something that works well with certain lenses and doesn't work well with most. So if your lens can take a teleconverter and produce good results, I would strongly recommend carrying a teleconverter with you, because there are going to be many situations on safari in India where you might want that little bit of extra reach. Of course, teleconverters come with their own negatives. They do compromise image quality a bit in return for extra reach, but that is a judgment I will let you take for yourself. But if you do own a teleconverter, please do carry it, because you might actually find it useful. Um, we do provide bean bags in all our safari jeeps to everybody who might want one. And bean bags, in my personal opinion, are the best form of camera stabilization in a safari vehicle. Um, if you have one of your own that you are that you particularly favor, or one that is particularly lucky for you, then do carry it. But otherwise, I would say there is no need to carry a bean bag. We provide them to you in your safari jeep when you visit us on safari here in India. So unless there is a very specialized one that you require for yourself, there is no need to pack it into your camera bag. Another optional add-on that a lot of people like and use, again, especially those who are into videography, is an external monitor to fix on your DSLR or mirrorless camera body, to be able to get a bigger screen view of the action in front of you, and to be able to shoot video. So if that is of interest to you, then you can certainly carry one of these. And again, going by the style of your photography and your various specific interests in photography, you might want to carry a set of filters, especially a circular polarizer filter for your landscape pictures. I sometimes even use polarizers for wildlife. So, be it wildlife or landscapes, you might want to carry your own favored set of filters. You see, when I'm shooting in places like Kaziranga National Park, on the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, or in our snow leopard landscapes, these are areas where there is a lot of glare in the as the mornings progress into day. So in situations like that, having a circular polarizer filter is really useful. Also, if you are shooting video, you might want a neutral density filter. So if you want to carry filters, do carry them. The most important thing for carrying all your gear on trips like these is to have a really nice, well-built, sturdy camera bag, because your camera bag is going to be going places just like you. It's going to need to fit into an airplane overhead bin. It needs to, at the same time, carry all of that gear that we spoke about. It needs to be sturdy enough to bounce about in the bottom of a safari jeep and protect everything that is there in it. And it should ideally be waterproof or come with a waterproof and dustproof cover that you can wrap it up with, so that your gear remains protected. Um, Getting one of these, I find them very useful. A lot of lenses these days, especially the high-end telephoto lenses, are weatherproof. They're built weatherproof. They're built to be able to withstand dust and moisture and rain and things like that. But it is always better to have one of these dust covers or rain covers, waterproof covers that you get for long telephoto lenses with you, because safari is dusty, and safari can sometimes be very, very wet. There are often times when we get unexpected rain, and sometimes when it rains for days on end, even if the forecast says otherwise. So, in those kinds of situations, it is always useful to have these. These will also reduce the amount of work you will need to do once you get back to camp, because they will protect your lens and camera from a lot of dust. Also, please don't travel with one of these, but have these at home. If your camera and lenses are going to go through the punishment of regular safaris, of traveling across the world, of going out into the wilderness all over the world, they need some pampering back home. Do invest in a dry cabinet. It saves you a lot of expenditure at the camera service station. Your cameras will undergo a lot of moisture exposure when they're out in the field. And if you store them in your camera bag or just put them in your cupboard or a wardrobe and leave them when in those when you get back home, there's a very high likelihood that the humidity is going to cause an outbreak of fungus, and fungus is the enemy of lenses. So perfectly new, perfectly good lenses have been lost forever because of fungus. So I would strongly recommend that you invest in a dry cabinet, plug it into your wall, and just keep it plugged in. And whenever you get back home, clean up your gear, nicely pack it in the dry cabinet, and just let your gear sit in that when it is not being used. That way, your gear is going to last for a very, very long time. Now, for the convenience of travel, you see, on our India expeditions, we do a lot of flying. We have stopped doing any flying on the India Tiger Quest and the India Tiger Photo Expedition, but on our Snow Leopard expedition and especially on the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, we do a lot of domestic flying. And in India, we don't use bush planes like people use in Africa. We fly through regular airports using regular passenger airplane. So that makes us subject to all the rules and all the restrictions of modern air travel. So having a photographer's vest is a very, very useful thing, I think. And it is a very nice way to sneak in gear that might otherwise tip the scales at the airport uh, check-in counter. You see, there is a limit of about 14 pounds on your carry-on luggage, and obviously, for obvious reasons, people do not want to check in their camera gear. While flying, they want to have it on their person. But if your camera bag camera backpacks can draw a lot of attention, and if your camera backpack looks big or heavy, sometimes that can get us into trouble with the airlines, because if they find out the real weight of our camera bags, they will certainly get a shock. So one of the ways in which to handle that is to have a photographer's vest and stuff in your lenses and other equipment into the pockets so that your camera bag doesn't weigh as much. And of course, as the photographer's vest is something that you are wearing on your person, that does not count as a bag. But besides that sneaky way of getting around airports, a photographer's vest can be very, very useful when out in the field as well, because it's a safe place to put your memory cards, your extra batteries, even extra lenses and things like that within easy reach of you, so that while you're shooting, you can quickly access those things. Um, for when you're flying through India, at Indian airports, we are still required to empty all of our electronics into a bin from our carry-on bags so that they can go through X-ray and be checked. You cannot just put electronics in your carry-on bag and put the bag through the X-ray scanner. A lot of times people put little cables and little pieces of, maybe a battery or something like that in some corner or under some zip in their backpack, and they might have forgotten about it. And, they get held up at security screening because then it shows up on their screen, but people have a lot of trouble finding it and locating it and actually pulling it out so that the security personnel can see it physically. So Nat Hab provides us with these little net pouches that are transparent, in which we can put all our little electronic knickknacks, cables, batteries, things like that, things that tend to get lost, things that tend to hide inside bags. And that makes it really convenient. As I was mentioning earlier, we hand these out to you on our during a pre-trip briefing, and you can put in cables and batteries and hard drives and all those little things in those pouches. And at the airport, you only have to get that one pouch out and put it on the tray rather than hunt every little piece of electronic out. There are certain things that I would advise not to carry with you because they'll just be dead weight and you cannot use them. Number one on that list will be a flash. You are not legally allowed to use a flash gun during wildlife photography anywhere in India's national parks and tiger reserves. If you carry a Leatherman or a Swiss knife or a hex wrench set, please be sure to pack those in your checked bags and not in your carry-on, because if you carry them in your carry-on, they are bound to get seized at the airports. Again, I will repeat the lack of necessity to carry a tripod, monopod, or bean bag, except under the exceptional circumstances or the snow leopard trip that I was mentioning. Except in those conditions, it is always better not to carry these things with you because they're not really useful, and because there are other ways to provide support to your camera while you're shooting from a jeep. And of course, there are some techniques that I would advise you to practice before you get on that plane to India. And number one, of course, would be to practice hand holding your long lenses. Go get familiar with your telephoto lens, go shoot birds in a park around your home, practice on your pets, practice at your local zoo, but practice hand holding your lenses and shooting very still, very sharp pictures using that. Try also and develop a muscle memory of all the buttons and the functions in your camera so that you can easily change those while looking through your viewfinder in the middle of a shoot without having to find things and while being unfamiliar with your equipment. Get very familiar, know where what button is and what dial is and which dial does what. You might also want to practice low light shooting, especially at high ISOs, because a lot of wildlife photography all over the world is primarily shot under those circumstances. Also, I did mention about carrying two cameras and trying not to switch lenses, but there are situations where you might need to switch lenses really, really quickly. And that might also be a situation where you suddenly decide to mount a teleconverter or to dismount a teleconverter from your rig. So do practice changing your lens quickly, but practice in a safe environment free of dust. Also, try and practice overriding autofocus with manual focus in order to focus on subjects that might be behind vegetation, where the autofocus of the camera itself might be struggling to lock on to the subject. You can also practice using the focus points in your camera for the same reasons, to try and get through vegetation to the actual subject. You can practice this quite well, and these are things that are fairly easy to master with some practice. And as I was mentioning, there's no better place than your local park or zoo, or even your own pets. So, with that, I'll come to an end of today's webinar, and I look forward to answering what questions you have for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Aditya. Now, before we start in with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. All right, so let's get to some of these questions. What size memory cards do you recommend using?
The largest and fastest that you can afford. Um, you get 64 GB, 128 GB memory cards, even 256 and 512 GB memory cards these days. But I usually find a 64 GB card to be enough to be more than enough for a day's shoot. So yeah, if you have a 64 GB in your camera and a 64 GB or two as backup, then you should be good.
Great, thank you. So, one of our guests has a 70 to 200 millimeter lens with a 1.5 teleconverter. Is that good for the trip?
It is good. 70 to 200 with a 1.5 is good. But I would say that 70 to 200 by itself will produce far superior results than with a 1.5. And a 1.5 mounted on a 70 to 200 will give you some extra reach, but not a lot. So if our guest does not have a longer focal length lens than a 70 to 200, like say a 300 or 400 or 500 millimeter, then I would recommend a two times teleconverter to go with the 70 to 200, because then that gives you a 140 to 400 millimeter lens. But of course, a two times teleconverter is going to work well with the 70 to 200 only if it is a 70 to 200 lens with a 2.8 aperture. If it's an f4, then he should or she should stick with the 1.5 times teleconverter.
Great, thank you for addressing that. So, when we're out in the safari vehicle, will there be room for my hard-sided camera case that has wheels on it?
Well, that depends on how big the case is. Usually, we can put it under the seat. Of course, on our India Tiger photo expedition, we have only two guests per jeep, so there is a lot more room. But on our Grand India Wildlife Adventure, we should still be able to fit it under the seat.
Great, thank you. So, you talked about this Nat Hab pouch. Um, do you have a picture of it, or could you just give us a little bit more information on how big it is,
Well,
etc.?
I unfortunately do not have a picture of it. I don't know why, because I have so many of those pouches. But it is say, about the size of this diary here, and it is a transparent net pouch. It's a white netted pouch that you can see through, and we give you a bunch of those, so you'll never fall short. And they can easily fit in a bunch of random electronics in them. And when you pull out the pouch and put it on the bin or the tray at the airport security, they can see right through it, so they'll not bother you about getting everything out.
Great. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, Aditya, that will be the last question that we do have for today. So I'd like to hand it back to you for your closing comments.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to our wonderful guests. I hope a lot of them do seem to be getting ready for their India adventures this year. So I look forward to seeing you on our expeditions, and wish you all the best. And thank you. I hope you found today's webinar useful and it will help you prep well for your trip.
Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd
You're welcome.
also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel with Nat Hab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.